welcome to the Full Moon Film Buff, episode 72. We're going to talk about Teen Wolf from 1985. I rented this from Amazon Prime. I had seen this before. We always start by talking about the prominent crew and cast. The film was directed by Rod Daniel. It was written by Jeff Loeb, billed as Joseph Loeb III, and Matthew Weissman, with effects makeup by Thomas R. Berman. Rod Daniel began his career in the entertainment industry working as an assistant director on television shows like The Rockford Files and Starsky and Hutch in the 70s. Daniel's big break came in 1984 when he directed the smash hit teen comedy 16 Candles, which also launched the careers of Molly Ringwald and John Hughes. While defining the teen comedy genre of the 80s, it was a box office smash. Daniel carved out a respectable career directing crowd-pleasing mainstream comedies throughout the 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s. Now in his late 80s, he's been retired from filmmaking since the late 2000s. Jeff Loeb broke into filmmaking, collaborating alongside Matthew Weissman to craft the script for Teen Wolf. He has remained involved with the franchise and its subsequent reboot. His pivotal breakthrough occurred in 2001 when he was enlisted as a writer and producer for the live-action TV series Smallville. This launched a career writing for superhero properties across various mediums, including television, film, and comics. His talents have been showcased through work for Marvel, DC, and independent heroic properties like the acclaimed TV show Heroes. My favorite work of his is the critically acclaimed Daredevil series from Marvel and Netflix. Now in his 60s, Jeff Loeb continues to be a highly sought-after writer and producer on high-profile comic book adaptation projects. Loeb's talent lies in his ability to strike a balance between exhilarating action sequences and profound character drama. This unique skill has solidified his status as a notable storyteller of comic books and their adaptations. We first talked about Thomas Berman for his work on The Boy Who Cried Wolf back in 1973. We've also seen his work on Cat People and The Beast Within from 1982. We'll see him again as part of this project. The cast includes Michael J. Fox as Scott Howard, James Hampton as Harold Howard, Susan Ursitti as Boof, Jerry Levine as Styles, Matt Adler as Lewis, Laurie Griffin as Pamela, James McCrell as Mr. Thorne, billed as Jim McCrell, Mark Arnold as Mick, Jay Tarses as Coach Finstock, and Mark Holton as Chubby. Michael J. Fox is best known for his iconic role as Marty McFly in the Back to the Future film trilogy between 1985 and 1990. He got his start on Canadian TV before starring on U.S. television as young Republican Alex P. Keaton on the sitcom Family Ties, which ran from 1982 to 1989, and I fondly remember watching. Following his success with Back to the Future, Fox moved on to an award-winning career in film and television. In 1991, at the age of 29, Fox was diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's, but did not disclose his condition to the public until 1998. He continued working as an actor and eventually became an outspoken advocate for Parkinson's research and public awareness. Fox chronicled his incredible story and experiences with the disease in his 2002 book, Lucky Man. Now in his 60s, he continues to work and campaign to help find a cure for Parkinson's. James Hampton is best known for playing Trooper Hannibal Dobbs in the TV show F Troop. In the sad bit of coincidence trivia, he recently passed away due to Parkinson's. Jerry Levine began his career as an actor, but transitioned to television director. We've actually seen James McCrell before in a minor role in The Howling. He started out hosting game shows before moving into film and television acting. He's also appeared in a lot of commercials. Mark Arnold has almost 150 credits on IMDb. What excited me most is that we will come back to Mark when we eventually get to Werewolf Santa that came out in 2023. Jay Tarses worked primarily as a screenwriter who did a lot of acting on the side. My kids would definitely want me to focus on the fact that he wrote The Great Muppet Caper from 1981 and The Muppets Take Manhattan from 1984. Mark Holton is best known as the antagonist from Pee-wee's Big Adventure in 1985. He's also beloved for his role in 1992's cult horror film Leprechaun. He's so known for this role that it got him to come out of retirement in 2018 for Leprechaun Returns. I loved this movie as a teenager, so I must say that I sat down to watch this with a little trepidation in my heart. I think we've all had that experience of going back to an old favorite only to find out it doesn't hold up. I am so relieved to report that I still love this film. It's showing its 4 decades of age, but Michael J. Fox was and always will be great. I cannot wait to get into it. Little tidbit, Scott Howard's house is located on the same block as George McFly and Lorraine Baines' houses. They're 1955 houses from Back to the Future, which was also released in 1985. Scott and Boof actually stop right in front of George's home during a walk home. Let's review the synopsis. A high school basketball team, the Beavers, is getting crushed by their rivals, the Dragons. Something snaps inside 17-year-old Scott Howard. He steals the ball and launches a half-court shot. It misses. Final score is 71-12. This is the Beavers' first game of the season. In the locker room, Scott notices a very long chest hair. Scott tries talking to Coach Finstock about some troubling physical changes that he's been noticing. Coach blows it off as normal puberty stuff. Scott is sick of just being average. He lives in a small Nebraska town of Beacontown. His only claim to popularity is playing for the Beavers, his school's underdog basketball team. Scott fawns after Pamela Wells, even though she dates his rival Mick, who plays for the Dragons, and bullies him on the court. He's not very nice to her either. Scott is completely oblivious to the affections of his best friend, Boof. He also works at his father's hardware store where he finds he can hear a dog whistle. He delivers supplies to the high school theater and offers Pamela a ride, but his hands get momentarily very furry. He tries to bring up his physical changes with his dad, who suggests that they need to sit down and talk. Scott's friend Styles interrupts to pick up Scott for a party. Scott scores a keg for the party thanks to some sudden red eyes and his voice dropping an octave. Styles surfs on top of Scott's van. Styles is all unearned confidence. It's a pretty good party, but Scott isn't feeling great. At the party, Boof gets Scott alone in a closet. They begin making out, and Scott gets unintentionally rough with her, clawing her back through her shirt. When he gets home, he finally undergoes a full transformation and discovers he's a werewolf. Scott opens the bathroom door to find his father, Harold, is one too. Harold hoped Scott would not inherit the curse because sometimes it skips a generation. The next morning, Harold sets Scott straight on werewolf lore. They are not mindless killers. They're not governed by the moon. Scott struggles at school. Stress triggers the changes in him. Scott reveals his secret to Styles, who agrees to keep it a secret. Scott and Styles start to figure out what the teen wolf can do. Boof and Scott have been friends since they were 6. She tries to help him and let him know how she feels, but Scott is just too wrapped up in his lycanthropic troubles to hear her. At the next basketball game, Scott snaps and transforms and discovers the wolf has powers, strength, speed, and agility. He almost single-handedly wins their first game in 3 years. As a result, Scott becomes popular, and the high school is overwhelmed with wolf fever. Pamela is suddenly interested in him. The team goes on a winning streak, but Scott grows alienated from Boof and his teammates as he begins to hog the ball during games and lets the fame go to his head. Boof is jealous of the attention Scott gets from Pamela and other girls at the school. Styles is making bank off Teen Wolf paraphernalia. After Scott gets a role as a werewolf cavalryman in the school play alongside Pamela, she seduces him and they have sex. On a date set up to make Mick jealous, Scott loses his temper. Pamela tells Scott that she's not interested in him as a boyfriend, much to his disappointment. That night, Harold sits Scott down for a talk. Harold tells about a scare Harold gave Vice Principal Thorne back when they were in high school. Harold says he didn't like who the wolf could turn him into, and he advises Scott to stay himself. Boof agrees to go with Scott to the upcoming spring dance, but only if he goes as himself. Scott can't agree to that, so he goes stag as the wolf, dressed in a smoking white suit over a black dress shirt and tie, with a blow-dried hairdo. He creates a dance craze obligatory for a teen film in that era. Boof pulls him into the hallway and kisses him, which turns Scott back into himself. When they return to the dance, a very jealous Mick punches Scott in the face and then proceeds to insult Boof and taunt Scott. Scott lashes out as the wolf and mindlessly attacks. A big chunk of the crowd turns against the wolf. Scott runs into the hall right into Thorne, who threatens him with expulsion. Harold sends his son home before intimidating Thorne by growling his face, causing the vice principal to wet himself. Scott renounces using the wolf and is cut from the school play. He quits the basketball team. Styles pressures Scott to be the wolf. During the regional championship game against the Dragons, he arrives to rally his teammates to play without the wolf, but with him. Despite the odds, the team works together and begins catching up. Behind by 1 point, Scott is fouled by Mick at the buzzer. He makes both free throws, winning the championship. Brushing past Pamela, Scott kisses Boof as his father embraces them both. Mick tells Pamela that they should leave, but she tells him to drop dead and storms off while everyone else celebrates the victory. We only get one real transformation scene. Scott is staring into the bathroom mirror witnessing and feeling his first complete change into the wolf. It's nothing amazing. A few bladder effects on the eyebrows and cheeks, but the look is fantastic. The makeup job is great. It's a certain form of very humanoid werewolf. Long, flowing hair all over the head and body, face mostly exposed so the actor can emote. It can almost read more as a caveman or a Sasquatch than as a werewolf at times. Having said all that, it just works for me. Quite a bit of the time, it's just hands and head. For example, at the school dance or when Scott is attending classes. But on the basketball court, it's a thing of flowing beauty, and I really, really dug it. There's not a lot of werewolf lore here. The story is firmly in the lycanthropy as a hereditary condition camp. The moon has almost no influence, though since Scott's first transformation did occur on the night of a full moon, there is a chance the lunar cycle has some impact. Scott generally exhibits the sense that he is in control of the wolf, so no one feels the need to mention silver. Werewolves can change form at the drop of a hat, and there's no hint that it can be spread via infection. Werewolves are agile and strong. 5'4" tall Scott can suddenly dunk a basketball with ease or do backflips on a moving van. Plus, he's got the enhanced senses. On its surface, Teen Wolf is a light 80s comedy about a teenager who undergoes a supernatural transformation into a werewolf. However, Scott's werewolf curse also serves as an exaggerated supernatural allegory for the very real formative metamorphosis teenagers experience. His excessive hair growth, increased strength and muscularity, and proclivity for aggressive behavior mirror the hormonal shifts and bodily developments of the average pubescent male experience. Teen Wolf visualizes puberty's growth spurts, surges in testosterone and libido through a fantastical werewolf lens. But the turmoil isn't limited to the physical. Scott's newfound werewolf abilities, heightened confidence, popularity, athletic prowess, and sexual attractiveness symbolize the psychological transformations of adolescence as well. Puberty catalyzes profound shifts in identity, sexual awakening, and self-confidence and social pressures, all embodied in Scott's expression of his powerful, animalistic wolf side. His dueling life as unassuming Scott and the wolf persona reflects the internal war many teens face between their former child self and the raw, emerging adult identity desperate to break free. The climax forces Scott to find unity and balance in accepting all facets of his transformative experience, not unlike the resolution adolescents seek through the turbulence of puberty. Scott must tame the wolf to establish self-control. Woven beneath the slapstick comedy is an astute understanding of the universal terrors, awkwardness, and self-discovery teens endure. By rendering puberty as a literal curse of metamorphosis into a monster, Teen Wolf illuminates the primal, alienating dread of one's changing psyche and body during adolescence. It's a humorous, yet emotionally honest journey of monstrous self-actualization that every transformative youth can relate to. It's tempting to read the ending as Scott literally rejecting the beast and his powerful masculine wolf side to revert to his old, less hyper-masculine self, but this implies that it's an either-or choice. We see Scott's dad use the wolf's power without exhibiting excessive male behaviors. Scott even applies the lessons he learned about cooperation, competition, and confidence from the wolf to win, all the while maintaining his sensitive openness. Scott succeeds because he gets the best of both worlds. I also want to publicly acknowledge that this movie directly quotes Uncle Ben from Spider-Man comics. Given who the screenwriter is, I suspect this is an Easter egg that Loeb snuck in. I've mentioned teen movies a couple times, so let's get into that. I Was a Teenage Werewolf pioneered the werewolf's transformation as a heavy-handed allegory for the turmoil of teenage years and puberty. Released in 1957, the film follows a troubled youth who unleashes his repressed rage after being inflicted with a werewolf curse. The werewolf symbolizes the aggression and violence that can emerge during adolescence, tapping into fears of uncontrollable hormonal changes, unleashing teens' most primal impulses. In contrast, Teen Wolf takes a more nuanced, self-aware approach to exploring similar themes through a lighthearted coming-of-age story with humorous overtones. It depicted both positive and negative effects of the wolf, with the climax centering on finding harmony by integrating the qualities rather than suppressing them completely. This reflects how teen movies have evolved in 3 decades since the 50s. By the mid-1980s, teen movies formed a distinct genre with recurring themes, character types, and plot points that resonated with the adolescent experience. These films capitalized on the era's attitudes, fashions, and music while exploring highly relatable issues for their target youth audience. Teen Wolf breaks many of these tropes even while it leans into others. One prevalent trope was the portrayal of high school as a social hierarchy, ruled by wealthy, popular students at the top and harder-edged outcasts or nerdy kids at the bottom. Popular kids were depicted as shallow and materialistic, while the outcasts had interesting personalities beneath their exterior defenses. However, in Teen Wolf, Mick and Pamela are no richer than anyone else, or even more popular. Styles, Chubby, Scott, and Boof were never picked on in school, just on the court. Rebellion against parental and adult authority was another common theme of teen movies, featuring out-of-touch, overbearing, or neglectful parents as obstacles for the teenage protagonist to overcome. Another common trope was a domineering principal. Risky behaviors like underage drinking, sexuality, and defying school rules allowed characters to assert their independence. Ferris Bueller thumbs his nose at his dean and easily dodges clueless parents on his day off. Again, Teen Wolf bucks this trope. Howard is a supportive single father. Even Vice Principal Thorne is barely an inconvenience to Scott. The process of self-discovery and finding one's identity was central to these coming-of-age stories. Main characters grapple with choosing between projecting the expected persona or embracing their authentic, quirky selves. They yearn for acceptance while staying true to their ideals. This trope formed the core of Teen Wolf, as Scott had to choose between the superficial, attention-seeking wolf persona and his true self as a supportive and cooperative friend and teammate. Romance, first loves, and heartbreak were also major elements in teen movies, often involving love triangles and romantic rivals. The underdog or offbeat lead would be caught between a popular love interest and a wealthier, cooler romantic rival. While Teen Wolf did not fully explore this trope, it touched on themes of relationships and societal roles. Pretty in Pink with Andy, Blaine, Steph, and Ducky, and the gender-swapped Some Kind of Wonderful with Keith, Amanda, and Watts are prime examples of this trope. Overall, teen movies in the mid-'80s served as explorations of adolescence, independence, relationships, societal roles, and identity, packaged in ways blending humor, angst, celebration of youthful nonconformity, and optimism. By comparing how each movie, like Teen Wolf, stuck to or bucked the specific tropes and conventions of the genre, you can see what themes the movie is really trying to focus on. Finally, I want to take this chance to compare Teen Wolf and Turning Red. Despite being created nearly 4 decades apart, the films Teen Wolf and Turning Red share a common narrative thread, utilizing supernatural body transformations as metaphors for the intense changes of puberty and coming of age. Both films delve into the physical and psychological transformations that accompany this phase of life. Scott grapples with his newfound werewolf abilities, which grant him confidence, popularity, and a struggle between his child and adult personas. Similarly, May's panda alter ego in Turning Red represents her push for independence, boundary testing, and the fracturing of her relationship with her overprotective mother. The films diverge in their exploration of specific puberty experiences. Teen Wolf's metaphor is specifically tied to him coming to terms with the physical and psychological consequences of male puberty. The wolf threatens to turn him into a real jerk if not mastered. In contrast, Turning Red focuses more on the shared struggles of female puberty, like bodily image issues and mother-daughter tensions. May's panda side represents her desire for autonomy, while her maternal relatives seek to suppress it. Ultimately, both protagonists undergo climactic arcs of self-acceptance, integrating their dueling child transformative sides. Turning Red emphasizes embracing the chaos and change, whereas Teen Wolf depicts Scott learning to harness his inner strength without letting the wolf consume him. While exploring puberty through the lens of young male sexuality and aggression and the modern feminine experience, respectively, both films employ imaginative monster allegories to depict the shared awkwardness of adolescence in a humorous way. So, if you like lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Contribute your thoughts and additional observations in the comments below. Let me know what I missed or what you noticed. Next, I plan on discussing Transylvania 65000 from 1985. Keep your eye on the moon, a silver bullet in the chamber, and we'll see you back next episode.